The rain pattered gently against the windows, a soft melody accompanying the cozy silence between Jungkook and Vine. They were sitting on the couch, a blanket draped over their legs, as Jungkook absent-mindedly flipped through channels. Vine, you're terrible at picking movies. Jungkook gave her a mock offended look. Jungkook, excuse me? I have impeccable taste. Vine snorted, snatching the remote from his hand. Vine, yeah, sure. That's why you stopped on a documentary about antique pottery. Jungkook shrugged, his lips curving into a sly smile. Jungkook, only few can understand. Pottery has depth, kind of like me. Vine rolled her eyes but couldn't help the small smile that escaped her. Vine, right, because you're so mysterious. Jungkook leaned closer, his gaze playful yet intense. Jungkook, am I not? Vine blinked, the sudden closeness made her throat dry. Vine, you're just full of surprises, that's all. He raised an eyebrow, his smile turning into a teasing smirk. Jungkook, surprises, huh? Like this? Before she could process, he reached over and flicked the tip of her nose. Fine. Jungkook. She swatted at his hand, but he was already leaning back, laughing. Jungkook. What? That's what you get for questioning my taste in movies. Vine crossed her arms, pouting. Fine. Next time I'll pick the movie, and you can sit there and suffer. Jungkook tilted his head, pretending to consider her words. Jungkook. Only if you let me do this. He tucked the blanket over both of their heads, creating a small cocoon that made Vine burst into laughter. Vine, what are you doing? Jungkook, this is my fortress now. No judgments allowed inside. Vine shook her head, still laughing as she leaned into him under the blanket. Vine, you're such an idiot. Jungkook wrapped an arm around her shoulder, pulling her closer. Yeah, but I'm your idiot. The warmth of his embrace and the sound of his quiet laughter made the rest of the world fade away, leaving just the two of them and the rain outside. The plan was simple: coffee, a quiet table, and a chance for Vine to drag Jungkook out of the house for some fresh air. Jungkook obviously resisted at first, muttering something about how he wasn't a cafe person. But Vine won out in the end, like always. Her cute puppy eyes were enough to wear down his defenses. Vine, you will like it, she had promised, looping her arm through his as they left the house. Vine, trust me, it's got that rustic vibe you pretend not to like. Jungkook had snorted but let her lead the way. The cafe wasn't too crowded when they arrived. Jungkook asked Vine about what she wanted to have. She selected after thinking for a few seconds and nudged him towards the counter to place their order. Fine, I'll grab us a table, she said, scanning the room for a good spot. But as she turned, a familiar voice stopped her in her tracks. Vine, is that you? She blinked and turned around to find herself face to face with Minho, a childhood friend she hadn't seen in years. His face lit up as he saw her, and before she could respond, he was pulling her into a friendly hug. Vine, Minho, what are you doing here? She asked, her surprise quickly turning to delight. Jungkook, who was mid-order at the counter, glanced over at his shoulder at the sound of her laughter. His gaze sharpened the moment he saw her talking to another guy. Vine gestured towards an empty table, and before Jungkook could intervene, Minho was sitting across from her. launching into an animated conversation about their shared childhood memories. Jungkook watched from the counter and pretended not to care about it at all. By the time he brought their drinks over, Wine and Minho were deep in conversation, laughing about some long forgotten prank they had pulled on a teacher. Minho, so you finally learned how to cook? Minho teased, leaning forward slightly. Wine laughed, shaking her head. Barely. Let's just say I'm good at ordering takeout. Minho, good thing. Otherwise you would starve. That was the last straw for Jungkook. Setting the drinks on the table with a pointed thud, he slid into the chair next to Wine, his presence impossible to ignore. Jungkook, here's your coffee, he said to Wine. His voice was calm but firm. Then his gaze shifted to Minho, his dark eyes unreadable. Jungkook, I didn't realize we would be entertaining guests. Wine blinked at the tension in his tone, and then it hit her. Jungkook wasn't just annoyed, he was jealous. Wine, oh, Jungkook, this is Minho, a childhood friend. Minho offered a friendly smile and extended his hand. Nice to meet you, man. Vine's told me a lot about you. Jungkook took his hand, his grip firm and deliberate. That's funny. She hasn't mentioned you. Minho chuckled, oblivious to the undercurrent in Jungkook's voice. Well, I've been out of the picture for a while. Just happened to be in town and thought I would stop by here. Jungkook's jaw tightened, and his hand moved to rest on the back of Vine's chair. Lucky timing. Vine sighed, shooting Jungkook a warming glance before turning to Minho. It's been great catching up, but Jungkook and I had plans. Let's talk again soon. Minho nodded, standing up with a polite smile. Of course, it was great seeing you, Vine, and nice meeting you too, Jungkook. As soon as Minho was gone, Vine turned to Jungkook, her brow raised. Really? Jungkook leaned back in his chair, sipping his coffee with exaggerated nonchalance. What? You know what? He smirked, setting the cup down. I don't like the way he was looking at you. He's just a friend. Vine protested, shaking her head. Yeah, a friend who clearly wanted to be more than that. Jungkook muttered, his hand still resting possessively on the back of her chair. Vine softened, leaning towards him with a teasing grin. You're jealous. Me? Jealous? Please. Jungkook scoffed, his tone defensive, but his ears flushing pink. She laughed, poking his chest. You're terrible at hiding it. Jungkook sighed, running a hand through his hair before meeting her gaze. Fine, I am jealous. Vine slipped her hand into his, her voice warm. You don't have to be. You're the one I came here with, remember? His grip on her hand tightened slightly, a small, satisfied smile tugging at his lips. Damn right I am.